The fire is already lit. Sit down, breathe, and listen. Carl Jung wrote that man is the great danger to man. But this danger doesn't show itself as chaos. It hides in what seems to work. You wake up early, follow goals, read about self-knowledge, say everything is fine, but deep down you know something is stuck. You postpone conversations, diminish your own desires, make promises you already know you won't keep, and then you start over as if the problem were lack of discipline. But what if it's not? What if what sabotages your best efforts isn't weakness, but a part of you that you've hidden for so long that it now commands everything? You sabotage yourself trying to maintain the part of you that the world approves of. But who commands your life is precisely the part you hide. Jung called this the shadow, the unconscious portion of the psyche that harbors everything you've tried to deny. Fears, anger, desires, memories, impulses, and that today expresses itself as anxiety, procrastination, conflicts, and cycles that repeat. In this video, you'll understand why self-sabotage is just the symptom, and how, behind it, lives a part of you that doesn't want to destroy you, but to wake you up. You weren't born trying to please. You weren't born afraid of making mistakes. You were born whole, with light and chaos, with will and cry. But too early, you learned to divide yourself. Maybe it was with a disapproving look, or with that phrase that cut deep. Don't talk like that. Don't feel that. You're too much. You're too little. And in that instant, something in you withdrew. Not out of cowardice, but for survival. Jung wrote that the shadow is born when the ego begins to reject parts of the personality that seem unacceptable to the environment. And so you learn to hide. Your anger, so as not to lose love. Your opinion, so as not to be ridiculed. Your creative impulse, so as not to be judged. Your sadness, so as not to seem weak. You became functional, but the price of acceptance was the amputation of truth. Over time, this repression becomes habit, and what was expression becomes tension. The body contracts what the heart cannot admit. You begin to say yes when you want to say no. Laugh while feeling invaded. Feign calm when inside you're imploding. And what happens to everything you've repressed? Nothing disappears. The shadow keeps it. And one day, it responds with sabotage, addiction, confusion, sudden surrender, or a tiredness that doesn't pass. It's not bad luck. It's the part of you that refuses to continue being invisible. And maybe that's why you live busy, but never really present. You always have something pending, full agenda, sequential commitments, simultaneous projects. But if someone asked you, what's the thing that matters most to you right now? The silence might speak louder. Because what seems like productivity often is just a sophisticated way of running from yourself. Jung would say that the shadow is cunning. It manifests not only in failures, but also in excesses. The excess of activity, the excess of control, the excess of occupation, all of this can be a smokescreen. The more you run, the less you listen. You postpone important conversations, not out of malice, but because you feel you're not ready. You delay vital decisions, saying, now is not the time.
But the right time never comes because deep down, something inside you doesn't want it to come. It's easier to put out fires than to deal with the fire that burns inside. It's more comfortable to answer 1,000 messages than to listen to your own silence. The name for this is procrastination with justification. And behind it, there's a part of you that's afraid to start what really matters. Because if you start, you'll have to find yourself. And if you find yourself, you might have to change. And if you change, you might not even recognize the image you've built so far. Work is not the enemy. The escape is. Running from yourself every day is a silent effort that costs dearly. And it's in this tiredness, this repetition, that the shadow whispers. You're not late. You just stopped going in the right direction.
You made it. Or almost. The position, the recognition, the praise, the result. But instead of relief came fear. What if they find out I'm not all that? You smile, thank them, feign confidence. But inside, something repeats. It was luck. It was a mistake. Next time they'll see I'm not all that. This is the impostor stage. You perform well, but fear the end of the play. You have talent, but don't authorize yourself. You're prepared, but distrust yourself. And when this repeats, you begin to sabotage. Miss the timing, avoid exposure, deliver less than you could, or create chaos where there was none. Jung wrote that the shadow is not just what you reject, it's also what you haven't yet had the courage to be. And in this case, what you reject is your own power. Imposter syndrome isn't born from the absence of value, but from the absence of internal permission to occupy that value. You fear being discovered as a fraud, but the real fraud is living trying to seem less than you are, so as not to bother anyone. Self-sabotage here isn't weakness, it's protection, an unconscious defense against the weight of sustaining a new identity. Because being seen requires presence, and presence requires truth, and truth includes parts of you that haven't been welcomed yet. Some people irritate you without clear reason. Others you avoid. And there are those you even dream about. But when they approach, you retreat. It seems confusing, but it's not. In the field of relationships, the shadow has a special talent. It projects onto the other everything you haven't yet accepted in yourself. Jung said that the unconscious doesn't only show itself in dreams, it also appears in encounters. That person who's too intense, who bothers you, might be revealing your own denied intensity. That confident figure who intimidates you maybe is showing the confidence you don't allow yourself to feel. And when someone truly sees you without masks, the shadow goes on alert. Because if the other sees, they might reject. And if they reject, the fear is confirmed. That's why you sabotage. Create drama where it's not needed. Stay silent when you most needed to speak. Or choose someone who will never choose you. Not out of cruelty, but because intimacy activates old memories of rejection. The other is dangerous, not because they can hurt you, but because they can reveal you. And sometimes, it's easier to maintain relationships where you hide than to sustain a bond where you'd have to be whole. The dormant shadow manifests in love, and when you don't know how to deal with it, it transforms affection into tension,
desire into fear, connection into confusion. But the truth is simple and difficult. You're not afraid of loving, you're afraid of being vulnerable. And love is exactly that.
You say I, but who's speaking? The part you show? The one you believe you are? Or the one you don't even know exists but decides when you freeze, explode, or disappear? Jung reminds us that the human psyche is not a straight line. It's a theater, with three main characters. The persona, the mask you wear to adapt. It smiles, responds, functions. It's who you seem to be. The ego, the center of your consciousness. It's who you think you are. Your ideas, decisions, plans, everything passes through it. The shadow, the basement. The part of you that was repressed, denied, or forgotten. It doesn't appear in meetings, but it appears in crisis. It doesn't choose with you, but it takes revenge when you lie to yourself. And the most frightening thing is that most of the time, it's the shadow that's in command. It sabotages plans the ego made, creates conflicts the persona tries to avoid, and puts the public you at war with the real you. That's why you feel like you're walking in circles, because inside you, there's a power struggle. And while you try to win through effort, the shadow operates through silence. True transformation doesn't begin with force, it begins with lucidity. Who's making your decisions when you're not looking?
He was young, strong, intelligent. He was training as a doctor and already fascinated colleagues with his presence. But there was something that bothered him. A man, a fellow who awakened in him a deep, irrational, violent rage. Jung confessed that if he met him in a dark alley, he would have done something irreversible. It was there that he realized inside him lived a monster. And worse, a monster he didn't control. This was the first time Jung faced his shadow with clarity, not as a concept, but as a living force. Unconscious, instinctive, dangerous. A force that lives in all of us. You carry a shadow, he wrote, and the less it is recognized in conscious life, the darker and denser it will be. The truth is simple. The part you hide doesn't disappear. It just finds other ways to express itself. In anger that escapes without warning. In the wrong choice made again. In silence that becomes illness. In crisis that arrives without explanation. Jung wasn't afraid because he was weak. He was afraid because he saw the truth. And the truth is that we're all capable of the worst. But only those who recognize this can choose the best. The problem isn't the shadow. The problem is you continuing to pretend it's not there. Because everything that is denied organizes itself to survive. And when surviving isn't enough, it explodes.
You say you want to change, that you're ready to turn the page, that you know what you need to do, but something inside you resists, an invisible force that prevents you from going all the way. It's not laziness, not just fear. It's a deeper pride, unaccessed. The kind of pride that prefers to stay in control, even if it costs your peace. The kind of pride that says, I already know this. It's not that serious with me. I just need focus. But the truth is, you don't need more focus. You need more humility to recognize what's really inside you. The humility to recognize that you're not in command, that there are parts of you, old, wounded, forgotten, that still guide your choices. Jung wrote that the unconscious acts compensatorily. That is, the more you force one side, the more the other reacts. If you pretend to be fine, it sends symptoms. If you say you've overcome, it presents you with a mirror. If you want to seem strong, it shows you your fragility, not out of cruelty, but for balance. You don't sabotage yourself because you want to fail. You sabotage yourself because you're not yet ready to give up the image of someone who doesn't fail. And while this image is more important than your truth, healing doesn't happen. Because healing requires surrender. Surrender is not giving up. It's admitting that you're not whole, and that denying this is what keeps you broken. And sometimes what paralyzes most is not failure. It's the silent sensation of being late because you're walking a path that was never yours.
You wake up and already feel you're late, even without knowing exactly where you should go, even without anyone saying you fell behind. It's as if time were passing too fast, as if everyone were arriving first. More resolved, more mature, more successful, and you there, in process. This sensation of being late doesn't come from facts. It comes from comparison. A comparison that happens in silence, but steals presence, value, and direction from you. Jung said that individuation, the process of becoming who you are, requires you to abandon the collective ideal. But what happens today? You try to find your rhythm in others' rhythm. Try to understand your story through the chapter of someone you don't even really know. You try to respect yourself, but the feed tells you it's not enough. The name for this is symbolic race. Nobody knows exactly what they're competing for, but everyone runs as if they were losing. And the more you run to catch up, the more you drift from your truth. The shadow here hides in comparison. It transforms others' success into threat, and your own path into failure. You don't feel like you're going slow. You feel like you're going wrong. But maybe it's not delay. Maybe it's just your real time. And the only thing preventing you from inhabiting it is this addicted gaze that measures everything from outside, but sustains nothing from inside. But it's only when he stops running that the shadow approaches. And listening to it requires more courage than continuing to adapt.
Everyone wants to change, but almost no one wants to face the price of change, descending to where what was rejected lives. Because the real beginning is not in motivation, it's in silence, in the pain that still throbs, in the anger that still burns, in the desire you couldn't erase. Jung called this shadow work. It's not a beautiful ritual. It's a brutal and intimate process. It's when you stop improving and start listening to yourself without filter, without mask, without manual. Where does it begin? With a notebook, with a sentence written in the middle of pain, with an emotional reaction that exposed you and that you decide not to ignore. It begins by remembering what you feel, not what you learn to say about what you feel. It begins by observing patterns without romanticizing cycles. The beginning is always in the dark, because the truth that transforms never comes screaming. It whispers when you stop hiding from yourself. Shadow work is not about becoming someone new. It's about including who was left out. The you who felt too much. The you who had your own will. The you who today appears as crisis, but before just wanted to be seen. And when you have the courage to face this, the shadow begins to yield. Not because it was defeated, but because it was, finally, acknowledged.
Not every shadow is born in you. Some come from much before. They come from culture, from untold stories, from avoided truths, from what your family never knew how to name. Jung called this the collective shadow, the dark side of an entire society, repressed, denied, disguised as virtue. It appears when groups turn against each other, when difference becomes threat, when others' pain is ignored to maintain some people's comfort. But it also appears subtly, in the shame of not producing, in the fear of seeming weak, in the silent demand for emotional perfection. The collective shadow acts like contagion. You don't notice, but you repeat. Don't agree, but consent. Don't feel proud, but participate. And when you live immersed in this without realizing, you begin to carry guilt that isn't yours. But you also start denying responsibilities that are important to you. Historical silence creates ghosts, and where truth is ignored, the shadow strengthens. Jung said, "Man is not from today, nor from yesterday. He is from an immemorial time." That is, you're not only dealing with your unconscious, you're dealing with centuries of silence, with ancestral patterns, with inherited emotional structures. Recognizing this is not carrying the world on your shoulders. It's stopping acting as if the world that shaped you isn't still shaping you. And when everything external falls silent, only the fire remains. There, what was not denied begins to transform.
You spent your life trying to erase what hurt, hide what was too much, tame what threatened your image of stable person. But truth was never domesticated. It just waited in silence. And now that you're tired of repeating the same cycle, now that explanations aren't enough, now that even tiredness has grown tired, you can finally stop and look inside. Self-sabotage is not your end. It's just the way your shadow found to call for you. Because the shadow doesn't want to destroy you. It wants to remind you of what you left behind, of your unexpressed strength, of your unheard fear, of your love that's still whole, just wasn't allowed. And maybe that's what the fire reveals. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about stopping fighting against who you already are. Nothing was erased, but something lit up inside. The fire doesn't judge. It warms, illuminates, consumes. And everything you threw into it tonight, the fear, the mask, the shame, the comparison, burned. And what remained is what was always here, waiting for space, waiting for voice, waiting for you. That night, I understood everything. And since then, whenever the world weighs heavy, I return to the fire. See you soon.